there's so much versatility in the product line. Do you want a single zone heat pump with an air handler and a backup heat kit? Or do you want a multi-zone that has, different styles of indoor units? So yeah, my advice would be to just take a look at all the products that are out there, talk to the different contractors who've been doing this for a while and see what they recommend.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, our regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Fine Homebuilding contributor and production manager at TDS Custom Construction, Ian Schwann. Today I am joined by residential area manager for Mitsubishi Electric Trane, HVAC, Maria Lauber. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. Maria, it's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Ian. It's great to be here.
So can you give us an overview of your role at Mitsubishi, and do you work with homeowners, contractors, installers? Who are you interacting with on a day-to-day basis?
Yep, so I am an area sales manager for Mitsubishi Electric. And the way we go to market, as a heating and cooling manufacturer in the industry, is that we actually sell to contractors through our wholesale distribution partners. And, there's many different advantages having a business model like that. Just having localized service and support, having, localized engineering support, being able to stock our products locally. So, there's a lot of us area sales managers out there. And my primary responsibility is to support everyone at these wholesale distribution levels, whether it be their sales territory managers and, getting in the car, doing ride-along, conducting sales calls and presentations at contractors. I'm also helping out with their engineers, making sure they have all the tools and resources they need to be successful in applying and designing Mitsubishi systems. I'll help with their brand managers, et cetera, because, at the end of the day, we realize that you're going to sell what you're most comfortable with. So that's my job, is to make our customers very comfortable selling and applying Mitsubishi. So I'm not so much involved in the retail sales at the homeowner level. However, I do walk job sites. I make product recommendations. Supporting the contractors and distributors that I work with.
So are you involved at all in training the installers, or is that a separate program within Mitsubishi?
Yep, that's a great question, because at Mitsubishi Electric, we really do value training. And the reason we value training so much is because, we don't want to have those callbacks that, are added cost for our contractors. We want homeowners to be happy. A lot of these times when our contractors are installing Mitsubishi systems the correct way, you don't hear from them again because homeowners are content. They love their heat pump unit. And, the other thing is, again, making our contractors comfortable selling these products and installing them. So the way we train our customers is that we offer a series of trainings. We have online free training modules. Go to MitsubishiComfort.com. There's introduction to inverter technology, single zone, multi-zone, controls training. That's all free. I actually, ride around in my car conducting training at the contractor level, going over, our whole product overview, talking about inverter technology, applications, where we're seeing heat pumps applied. And then on top of that, we actually across the country have, brick and mortar state-of-the-art training centers where we have all of our equipment installed so customers can come and work, hands-on on our equipment with service and installation. On top of that, our distributor locations, a lot of them are building out these training centers too, because there's more and more in demand for heat pumps. So there's definitely demand for training on these.
Are you finding that most of the people that you're starting these trainings with have no experience in installing heat pumps, or have they installed other manufacturers' equipment or perhaps older equipment?
That's another very good question. Some are still new to the game. There's some early adapters, and there's still that, are just trying this out. Now that their technology has been very proven, they know they want to get on board. They're getting a lot of demand from homeowners asking them. I've seen my neighbor has a mini split. I want one too. So we have a dealer program at Mitsubishi Electric. It's called the Diamond Contractor Program, and these dealers, they're an extension, of our brand. I would say they're contractors that I would trust to install a mini split in my house, and so they go through in order to become a diamond contractor, which there's many benefits because you get an extended warranty, you get access to marketing dollars, tons of benefits. They have to go through that series of training, and the program is a tiered program. So we have standard diamond contractors, preferred diamond contractors, and elite. And the more training you do, and the more you are engaged in our programs, that's how you move through the tiers. So there's those advanced, which are the elites, and then the standard ones who are newer to the program, just getting started.
And is that tied to the level of training that your employees have? Do you have to have everybody certified through Mitsubishi at a given level to reach that status?
Yep. The training is tied to the program. So in order to move through the tiers, you got to complete those training requirements. And the more you take advantage of training wise, the more points you get towards your diamond contractor. It's called a scorecard. I like to call it a dealer development tool to help you grow as a diamond contractor.
How has Mitsubishi gone about developing this program? Is this something that came out of engineering or sales within the company?
That's a great question. Our corporate headquarters is in Swanee, Georgia. We have a diamond contractor program manager there. They're putting together these programs. We don't want our customers to just be one and done sale. We want them to be long-term partners with us. So we've developed these programs to keep them more loyal, more enjoying our brand, happy with the service and support. So that's over the time we've developed that dealer program.
That's got to be really important with a lot of the technological advances that have come out in recent years. Like, I know that in the upper Midwest, where we both are, and the Northeast, these have really become popular options for people looking to electrify their homes. Can you talk us through some of these technological advances that have made these systems viable in cold weather?
Yes, we have made a lot of technological advances. We came to the U.S. market in 1980s as the first mini split manufacturer, and back then, heat pumps were known to be, mostly a single zone solution for a hot or a cold spot, or a renovation, a bonus space. And at that time, they weren't as much. They didn't have the best reputation. People were like thinking that they wouldn't work in cold climates. And why is that? It's basic 101 heat pump. What we're doing, we're a heating and a cooling unit. And what we're doing is we're working to move around heat. That's why it's called a heat pump. So in air conditioning mode, we're actually removing heat from the inside. We're ejecting it outside. So that's why, it's a hot summer day, your air conditioning unit outside, it feels warm because we're ejecting that heat to cool down the space inside. In heating mode, so this is, how heat pumps actually are working outside to capture heat from outside and move it indoors. So, a lot of people, because of that, are used to be hesitant, I would say. However, those technological advances we've developed, you said it perfectly, cold climate. We've branded our cold climate heat pumps to be hyperheat units. These hyperheat units, are single zone. Wall mount can provide 100% heating capacity to -5. That's ambient temperature. That's not wind chill. So it's 100% capacity to -5. We're rating it, we've rated it to work down 80 to 90% capacity down to -13. We're pretty conservative in what we publish in all of our submittals and our engineering manuals that, we say there's a potential cutoff for your heat pump at -18 ambient. It all depends on pressures, how is the compressor going to lock out to protect itself. But otherwise, our other hyperheat units are 100% heating capacity to 5, and then again we rate them to -13. Another cool thing I want to talk about is we do make our own, backup heat kits, electric heat strip that provides supplemental heating on top of our air handlers. We have stab and duct heaters, these custom duct. Thermalect makes some that go right into our pancake style horizontal units. So there's lots of cool things to ensure that your heat pump will operate in these cold climates nowadays.
And what does the inverter technology have to do with that cold climate operation?
So the inverter technology, so we're working very differently than, other traditional systems that are out there because we sense those traditional systems many people are used to, they sense temperature at a thermostat, right? And then as soon as, the thermostat reads, below the set point, then, your equipment's going to turn on full 60 hertz. And that's how, it's controlling the unit to operate. So you have those on and off starts. So inverter technology, how we're different is that we're actually sensing temperature at the return airstream in the unit, and we're running a communication wire to our outdoor unit, and it's going to tell the compressor to modulate, to ramp up and down according to exactly the energy that's needed to heat and cool the space. So did that answer your question, Ian? How the inverter is different than the conventional systems?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that you see branded on the units, but it doesn't jump out at you that it's actually, I'm sure HVAC techs understand this, but I think homeowners and even people outside the HVAC industry don't understand that it is a compressor in there running the unit. And just like when you're using an air compressor on a site, you're used to them running full bore and then shutting off. And the inverter technology is what kind of modulates that and helps it not either do that all or nothing, right?
Exactly. They say the hardest thing you can do to your heating and cooling equipment is to turn it on because it's drawing those high lock rotor amps that cause a lot of wear and tear and strain on the units. So yeah, when it's 60 hertz on, then it shuts off right away. It's damaging for your equipment. So Mitsubishi, we can have a soft start at 20 hertz. So the compressor is ramping up slowly. We can reach 120 hertz, to allow for faster heating and cooling, but then we modulate. So we throttle back, we're only using the amount of energy that's being called for.
That was something that kind of struck my wife and I when we worked with Mitsubishi on our house, which was the Fine Homebuilding house for 2021, and we put in the three head hyperheat unit, and the people that were there from Mitsubishi were explaining to us that the worst thing you can ever do is shut it off. The idea is that it should be able to run and self-modulate using that
Yep.
inverter technology.
It's like cruise control.
Right. Right, and you talked about the engineering for it, that it should be able to produce a certain amount of heat at, I think you said -5 it was supposed to still produce, its full
Net
heat,
negative
and
13, we rate them down.
-13.
Yep.
So we because we leave ours on, like this morning, as we were talking before we started recording, I had -18 and the unit was still producing heat. Now our backup heat was on to supplement it, but between the high performance nature of our house and the Mitsubishi unit and our backup heat, we were still at our standard thermostat temp when I woke up this morning. And last February, we had some, I think, -20, -25, and it was still producing heat that you could feel just from putting your hand in front of the unit.
Yeah. So Ian, remind me, what I know you have a multi-zone system. So you have one outdoor unit. How many
Yep.
zones do you have in your house and what style?
So we have three of the wall-mounted units, two 9,000 BTU, and one, I believe it's an 18,000 BTU in our main room upstairs.
Oh, awesome. It's great. We woke up today, it was negative 14. So I know our units are definitely being tested. So great to hear the success there that it's still producing heat over by your house.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that we did was located the outdoor unit on the southeast facing corner of the house, so it does get a full amount of sun during the day. And I've had a few HVAC installers talk about how you should try and avoid installing these on the northern face of the house if you want them to work to their maximum potential in winter. And it seems to have worked out pretty well for us.
Yep, it's a good point. That's all about the applications training I was talking about earlier, and how to properly apply these heat pumps so they operate the best.
So how do heat pumps, generally speaking, differ or compare to traditional systems in terms of their efficiency and installation costs?
Yep. So there's, a couple different performance metrics, in the heating and cooling industry, how we're measuring efficiency. Those are, SEER ratings, HSPF 2 ratings, as well as, it's called the COP, so coefficient of performance. I personally like to talk about the COPs of these units, and I can compare our heat pump units versus a gas furnace and electric resistance baseboard heat. So for if you were to go and buy a gas furnace nowadays, like the contractor will probably come to your home, present you with a list of different options, and the best tiered furnace would probably be 98 to 99% efficient is what they call it. And that sounds really efficient. Wow, 99%. However, that 99% is actually less than 1 COP. When it comes to electric resistance baseboard heat, um, you input 1 kilowatt of energy, your output for your baseboard heat is 1 BTU of heat. So it's either 100% on or it's off. The magic about the heat pumps and why we're so different, why we're so efficient, is what we're actually doing with our inverter compressor. Our outdoor unit is outside is, for every 1 kilowatt of energy we're utilizing, we're able to capture three kilowatts of existing heat. They say that the cheapest kilowatt of energy you can have is one that's reused. So we can produce up to 3 times more heating with our inverter technology. So, our COP for some of our products are up to 4. So, we're 400% efficient. So yeah, when it comes to those other different types of conventional systems in the market, heat pumps are much more efficient in that sense. I know you asked about cost, and cost is a little confusing for me to explain because our contractors are pricing that out. That cost all comes from the size of the capacity needed for your house. It's also there's different tiered products. So we have really high tier product, higher SEER, you get what you pay for. We have mid tier, we have lower SEER units. So, that's going to determine the cost, as well as, the ease and flexibility of the installation. You could have a single zone heat pump, or you could have a multi-zone heat pump. And, the labor involved with running line sets will also determine that cost. So if you're interested on getting a price for a heat pump, definitely, go online, you research contractors and get, some quotes, because they'll be able to provide you with those prices.
And the SEER rating is really a way to compare one tier of unit to another, right? Can you give a brief overview of how a consumer could look through the items on your website, or compare what they're getting from maybe between 2 HVAC contractors who use different equipment?
Yep. So SEER rating, seasonal energy efficiency ratio. I think that's what it stands for. That's another performance metric that rates efficiency of the products. So in HVAC, the higher SEER, the better. So air conditioners, your standard air conditioner, a lot of times it's regulated now. It needs to be 14 SEER. Our FS series wall mount is up to 33 SEER. So you'll see, how much more efficient the SEER rating is. And yeah, we do kind of, when I'm talking about our good, better, best style of wall mounts, the higher SEER the better. So our mid tier one, that's our GL series, that's about 26 SEER. But then we do have 18 SEER and 16 SEER wall mounts too. Those are for the very cost driven consumers that just want air conditioning, just want shoulder seasons heating. These are not cold climate heat pumps, those lower SEER models. But it's we provide options in that sense if it's budget driven.
The first heat pump that I ever installed was at our house in New York, which was maybe 12 or 14 years ago that we put it in. And it was an off-brand one that just our local HVAC guy installed. And I had issues with it toward the end of us living there. And I had another contractor that I was working with at the time come over and take a look at it. And he just shook his head and said, you bought this like 6 months before they got really good, and you shouldn't have bought some off brand. So he
Yes.
kind of talked me through some of the good, better, best, and then what's good for a shoulder season, versus actually being able to do a mixed climate zone like what we were in New York, where we did have the hot, humid summers that required air conditioning and pretty cold winters.
Yep. Yeah, there's because of the demand of heat pumps nowadays, every manufacturer is getting involved in this, making their own heat pumps. So definitely do your research, know what product you're buying because they're not all the same.
So you talk about demand. What has the Inflation Reduction Act done for the demand in heat pumps and the heat pump market in general?
Yep. So the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed last year, it has brought just a ton of attention to heat pumps. I say it's kind of the government's way of saying that heat pumps are the solution for decarbonizing the planet. We're not burning any fossil fuels to produce any heat. So these are much better indoor air quality. They're an electric air source heat pump. So the reason for all of that is now the government is providing a lot of funding for these heat pumps. So it just went into effect in January. There's now a federal tax credit up to $2,000 is provided for a tax credit for 30% of the cost of an installation of a heat pump. And we do on our website, if you search Mitsubishi comfort.com/Inflation Reduction Act, we have a whole list of approved models where you can get this $2,000 tax credit. All states and utilities are also getting on board with this, and you can stack rebates together. These systems are almost seeming to. There's like a trend; they're going to start paying for themselves almost because you can start stacking these utility rebates. So in my state where we live in right now, the state rebate is $1,300 for heat pump systems. And I know, the coastal regions, the east and the west coast, they are quicker to adapt to these heat pumps. They actually have larger size utility rebates and state rebates. One thing about the Inflation Reduction Act, that there's going to be, depending on income eligibility, up to $8,000 rebate. This is going to be up to the states, how they're going to distribute those funds, but that's going to be figured out, quarter three, quarter four of this year. So, yeah, there's lots of traction going on with heat pumps due to this Inflation Reduction.
And are those rebates also eligible to be used for the cost of install, or is it just the cost of the unit itself?
It's the cost of install. Yep, the entire system. So up to $8,000, depending on your income eligibility for the whole heat pump installation.
And you said you guys have some stuff on your website about which ones are eligible for it, and
Yep.
what makes those specific units eligible for the IRA tax
It's
credits.
very performance driven. So we're looking at COPs. I talked about those coefficient of performance. They need to be a certain rating. I believe it's 1.75 at 5 degrees. We're looking at the HSPF2. That's how many watts your home is using to produce or to power these heat pumps. We're looking at the SEER2 rating. And I know it's divided up between north and south, just because these heat pumps perform differently in different climates. So there is a different list with north and south. So if you go on Google, I always say, GTS, Google that stuff. You're gonna just put Mitsubishi Electric IRA, and then you'll see the whole list of eligible models.
So I think when you get into some of the tax credit stuff, that's when homeowners actually start thinking about taking direction and maybe looking up the units themselves or talking to contractors or other people that have them. And I know from my experience that some homeowners and designers don't like the idea of having the wall mounted units like I do. Now, I think you've got a white wall and a white unit that's above your head. After a couple of days, you don't notice it anymore. But what are some of the other options that Mitsubishi has for somebody who might be looking for something that fits either a really modern design or something that fits more with a traditional home?
Yep. So, I started with Mitsubishi back in 2013, and that opposition was much more common back then. I don't want this on my wall. I would say that, since that, this heat pumps have become way more accepted. And consumers are used to them now. They used to compare them to window units, PTAC units. Now they realize they're extremely efficient. They're providing precise zoned comfort in the space that exactly how you said it. Once they're installed there, they forget about them. It becomes just like any other appliance in your home, like a microwave or a TV. You just forget it's there. I actually have one of my customers, he does a lot of Mitsubishi, and it's a little bit of a bullish tactic he uses, but he says he has a 100% success rate that he'll tell his homeowners, let me install this. If you don't like it in a month, I'll come back, rip it out, and take it back. And, he said he has a 100% success rate in that because homeowners grow to love it. But you said, what other styles of indoor units do we have? We do offer quite a bit different styles of indoor units. We have a floor console. That's if you don't have any space on the wall, it's a vaulted ceiling. You can install this lower level floor unit. We have a cassette unit that's designed to fit in between 16-inch joists on center. We just launched a smaller size of that cassette unit that actually fits in between eye joists, and it's a 6,000 BTU size. Besides that, we do have our ducted units, so you can conceal them. We have a lower static units, 0.2 static. We have a 0.6 static, and then we also have our ducted air handlers that you can conceal if you don't want to see anything on the wall.
And when you talk about the cassette unit, that once it's installed really just looks like your standard heating register grate in the ceiling, right?
Yep. Yeah, that they're the cassette unit, fits right in between the joists, and there's a one-way throw off of there, and then heats and cools, and it's a great unit for renovations, add-ons. When you're going to drywall anyway, that's where I'm seeing a lot of times that applied.
And is there a performance difference between some of these units and the standard wall-mounted unit like what I have?
Yep. So they all do have, different SEER ratings. They all have different performance. The performance really comes from the outdoor unit. So if you pair, your indoor style units with a hyperheat outdoor unit, you're going to have hyperheat performance in the inside. If you have a standard heat pump, these units will have standard performance. It's all, that compressor is where the performance comes from. And we do publish, all. It's called mylinkdrive.com. It's a site that has all of our submittals, engineering manuals, install manuals, operation manuals, compatibility charts, everything. We're an open book. So if you were looking on performance ratings for our engineers, or that's where it all is. That's where it's all housed.
So one of the first areas where I saw heat pumps being installed for total heat and cooling in a home was in the high performance building sector, especially in passive house or net zero homes, where I think the hyperheat is a great match for somebody who just wants to be electric and have the higher levels of insulation. Uh, but some of the people that work in the high performance industry they don't have the experience in trying to spec the right size system. I know it's not good if you have something that's too large. Obviously, too small is not good. But is there anything that you and your colleagues at Mitsubishi do to help builders and designers design and spec the right systems for these high performance homes?
Yes, we do have a team of experts for this application specifically. Net ready homes are becoming very popular now. So we have what is called a performance construction team that they serve to help these efficient builders, these green builders, develop these homes, because these, as exactly how you said it, Ian, like there's a very tight envelope for these houses, and they're very tightly insulated. You don't want to oversize the units, right? So we're developing lower capacity indoor units also, just to function with these spaces. It's 6,000 BTU indoor units. I know we're coming out, I believe, with a 4,000 BTU unit also. We do have, as I said, localized support at the distributor level too. We have, design engineers that are helping with this. A manual J load calc is always recommended for sizing our units. That needs to be done first before any product selection goes into place. And that's, considering the windows of the home. Do you have solar panels? Are you offsetting your electric costs with those? The R value, the insulation, the studs of the house makes a difference. So, yep, that performance construction team is definitely a good resource for that.
And is that something that people can find through your website, or do you suggest that they go direct to a local dealer that they're going to use to do the install?
I would say a lot of our contractors, know to come to their support, like, either through the distributor or through myself. I'll connect them with an expert. We have applications team also in our Swanee headquarters. I'm constantly relying on those engineers for engineering support and guidance. I told them they can never retire down there. So there's. I'm curious, Ian. I know that you went through one of our performance construction managers. How did you get set up with all of that?
So it was a lot of back and forth between. It started with myself and Chad. I think Chad Gillespie is, if I'm
Yep, he's
remembering
our
his name
performance
right.
construction manager. Yep.
So at the first step was getting Chad my home design and then also getting him my energy model. I didn't do a specific manual J. I did kind of a high performance home energy model, and I got him that, which gave him my BTU loads, and we had a Zoom call to discuss the orientation of the house and what some of my goals were, and he suggested two different options. One was to do two separate systems, a ducted system in our basement, and then just the wall mounted unit upstairs. And then after taking that to the contractor that you had recommended for us to use as the installer, discussing the option with the installer who was going to have to do the work, because we had already rough framed the home and we hadn't designed it in mind of having ductwork. The installer pointed out that there was going to be a lot of added cost and possibly some design changes that had to happen at that point. So the installer and I did take that information back to Chad, and we worked through and got to the system that we have now, which is the two 9,000 BTU units in our bedrooms in the lower level, and then on our upstairs main level we have the 18,000 BTU unit.
Got it. So how did you get connected with Chad Gillespie? How did you find out about him?
So that was all through Fine Homebuilding and the Fine Homebuilding house program. So once I signed on to be a feature of that, Mitsubishi was one of the sponsors of that program. So I found out about it that way. But prior to that, working on projects as builders, we were always up to, left with, we can only do as good as the knowledge of our HVAC contractor. And as you mentioned, some people like to install or sell one type of equipment versus another. But over the years, I've worked with several different contractors on projects whose main focus is the Mitsubishi hyperheat systems, just because of where I've lived. So what advice do you have for a builder who's interested in getting into this the heat pump game and offering these systems maybe as part of an electrification package for new homes, or for a homeowner looking to electrify their existing home?
Yep, I would. My advice to that builder would be to really, do your own research, because there's the thing about Mitsubishi products. There is so much versatility in the product line. There's not a one size fits all solution. So it's really understanding, how you want the house to be laid out. Do you want, a single zone heat pump with an air handler and a backup heat kit, or do you want a multi zone like your house, Ian, that has, different styles of indoor units, different zones, what are the priority spots in the house? Are they empty? Is an existing home? Are they empty nesters where the kids aren't living there anymore? They don't need the condition those spots as much. So yeah, my advice would be to just really, take a look at all the products that are out there. Talk to experts. There's talk to the different contractors who've been doing this for a while and see what they recommend.
You made an interesting point about when you look at the website or you look at a catalog from Mitsubishi, there's hundred, or what seems to be hundreds of different model numbers that maybe you'd really need to dig into the specs to see what's different from one outdoor unit to another. So I think that's really good advice to uh, familiarize yourself with the offerings, and then find out from other people or from someone like you or Chad or some of the other uh, Mitsubishi reps in your area about what other people are using, what works, and would you think that a contractor would be better starting with a narrower, uh, like a narrower offering of heat pumps and sticking to, maybe what's tried and true in the area? Or do you guys regularly encourage people to think outside the box and try some of these newer systems?
That's a really good question. It makes me go back to the point earlier when we're talking about, you sell what you're most comfortable with. So I feel that contractors starting out will sell a lot of the single zone systems. When I say single zone, it's just your outdoor unit to your indoor unit with your copper line sets. Once you get more comfortable, and I really again recommend obviously that training to attack those multi zones. The more you do, the more you get comfortable with, the more best practices you start to develop on where to mount the outdoor unit, how to position the indoor style of units. Yeah, I really recommend for our dealers to check out our training so they are more comfortable and doing those larger systems. Once you get into 5 to 8 zones, that's where you use one of our branch box units. I'm not sure if you have a branch box unit, Ian, but that's where.
No.
Okay. So yeah, those are up to 8 zones you can have on a multi-zone, and we actually take the LEVs, which is linear expansion valves. That's precisely controlling the flow of refrigerant to each indoor unit, and we move it into a distribution box that can be mounted, in the attic space. Actually, outside we have a NEMA rated weatherproof enclosure, a basement, and that's where you can distribute the refrigerant to the indoor units from there.
Yeah, I didn't realize you could go that big with that many different zoned units. I can see for larger homes that would be a pretty important thing to offer to make these work.
Yep. Yeah, up to 8 zones.
So what about your house? Do you have any plans to electrify, or have you already started to electrify?
Yep. So it's funny you ask that because I'm a little ashamed to admit this. I'm one of the only Mitsubishi employees that don't have a unit in my house yet. However, my first priority zone, and my goal is to get this done this year, is this, sunroom behind me. That's a very underutilized space because, it's negative. It was negative 14 degrees this morning. There's no way I'm going to go in that room and sip some coffee. And, if I had an FS series hyperheat wall mount, I could be able to entertain there in the winter. I could, use it for air conditioning in the summertime. It would definitely be a 4 seasons room versus what it's being used for right now, which is like a 2 seasons room. The other space in my house I would love to have a mini split in is the master bedroom. Fun fact, they say you spend a third of your life in the master bedroom. So it's, it pays to be comfortable. And I like to, when it's, sleeping at night, I like to have the set point a little lower, but I don't want to, pay to condition my entire footprint of my home. So it'd be nice just to
Sure.
have a mini split in there. One thing I didn't even talk about today, Ian, that, I really am looking forward to for my house because I have an old air conditioner is our IntelliHeat A coil. Mitsubishi, we already started the ship. We've come out with an our own A coil that is a dual fuel offering. So it's a HRI rated, tested, approved to sit at work on anybody's thermostatically controlled gas furnace. And there's going to be a smart switchover based, if there's a control box, you can input your electric rates versus your gas rates. And, depending on what's, cheaper cost, my heat pump can operate, carry the majority of the load. I'm going to be able to displace gas in my house. And then, if when it gets to, this negative 14 day, that's when my gas furnace can engage and carry the load. And on top of that, yeah, there's also a capacity balance point switchover. So if you want your gas furnace to come on at a certain temperature, you can control it that way too.
I think for areas like where we live, that dual fuel option is such an important thing for reducing the fossil fuel use of some of these older homes that just they don't have the insulation or the air sealing or the windows, and it's really cost prohibitive to do that work, but somebody still wants to lower their use, because I think people don't realize that in the bulk of the year is shoulder seasons where it's really not required. You've only got this bitter cold, at least in our area, for maybe a month or 6 weeks.
Exactly. Yep. The goal of the dual fuel system is to displace gas. But in this market where it just gets so cold, there's no problem having that backup furnace still.
So, Maria, it's been great having you on with us. Is there anything else you want to tell or ask our audience before we go?
No, I just want to say thank you very much for having me on. Anything else I really tell the audience again, check out, and it might be a biased website, but it's MitsubishiComfort.com. Definitely do your research. We list our diamond contractors on there too. Not all contractors are the same. A quick example I just want to give, there's a golf course right by my house, and there's two outdoor condensers that are on this clubhouse. And these are the DIY models. There's I call it murder to our industry that 'cause I don't think mini splits should be done do it yourself. There should be done by a professional. And these outdoor units, they actually come with pre-charged line sets that you can't use a pipe cutter to cut. With our units, you use a pipe cutter, deburr the line sets, reflare. Well, these ones, it literally looks like a garden hose, is wrapped around these units. And on top of that, there's a penetration hole you need to seal up, once you go from the outdoor unit to the indoor unit with your line sets, and they never sealed that penetration hole. So, you can only imagine what kind of critters are getting in there. When I walked inside, actually, the unit said E, which means error. So it's not even, operating correctly. So it was a poor investment. So definitely do your research, know what brand, know what contractor. And yeah, these are great systems. Thank you again, Ian, for having me on here.
That's great advice, Maria. Thanks for taking the time to join me today. And thanks to everybody for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And again, please comment or review us wherever you're listening. Helps other people find the podcast. Thanks again.